Norn, an extinct North Germanic language, was spoken in the Northern Isles off the north coast of mainland Scotland and in Caithness in the far north of the Scottish mainland, after Orkney and Shetland were pledged to Scotland by Norway in 1468-69. It was gradually replaced by Scots. History. Norse settlement in the islands probably began in the early 9th century. These settlers are believed to have arrived in very substantial numbers, and like those who migrated to Iceland and the Faroe Islands, it is probable that most came from the west coast of Norway. Shetland eponymy bears some resemblance to that of northwest Norway, while Norn vocabulary implies links with more southerly Norwegian regions. Orkney and Shetland were pledged to James III in 1468 and 1469 respectively, and it is with these pledges that the replacement of Norn with Scots is most associated. However, the decline of Norse speech in Orkney probably began in 1379 when the earldom passed into the hands of the Sinclairs, and Scots had superseded Norse as the language of prestige on the island by the early 15th century. In Shetland the transition began later, but by the end of the 15th century both islands were bilingual. Despite this, the process by which Scots overtook Norn as the primary spoken language on the islands was not a swift one, and most natives of Orkney and Shetland likely spoke Norn as a first language until the late 16th and early to mid-17th centuries respectively. It is not known exactly when Norn became extinct. Sources from the 17th and 18th centuries speak of Norn as being in a state of decline and generally indicate that the language remains stronger in Shetland than in Orkney. A source from 1670 states that there are only 3 or 4 parishes in Orkney where people speak Nords or rude Danish, and that they do so chiefly when they are at their own houses. Another from 1701 indicates that there were still a few monoglot Norse speakers who were capable of speaking no other thing, and notes that there were more speakers of the language in Shetland than in Orkney. It was said in 1703 that the people of Shetland generally spoke English, but that many among them retained the ancient Danish language, while in 1750 Orkney-born James Mackenzie wrote that Norn was not yet entirely extinct, being retained by old people who still spoke it among each other. The last reports of Norn speakers are claimed to be from the 19th century, but it is more likely that the language was dying out in the late 18th century. The isolated islands of Fowler and Unst are variously claimed as the last refuges of the language in Shetland, where there were people who could repeat sentences in Norn, probably passages from folk songs or poems, as late as 1893. Walter Sutherland from Score in Unst, who died about 1850, has been cited as the last native speaker of the Norn language. However, fragments of vocabulary survived the death of the main language and remain to this day, mainly in place names and terms referring to plants, animals, weather, mood, and fishing vocabulary. Norn had also been a spoken language in Caithness but had probably become extinct by the 15th century, replaced by Scots. Hence, some scholars also speak about Caithness Norn, but others avoid this. Even less is known about Caithness Norn than about Orkney and Shetland Norn. Almost no written Norn has survived, but what little remains includes a version of the Lord's Prayer and a ballad. Hildner. Michael P. Barnes, professor of Scandinavian Studies at University College London, has published a study, The Norn Language of Orkney and Shetland. Classification. Norn is an Indo-European language belonging to the North Germanic branch of the Germanic languages. Together with Faroese, Icelandic and Norwegian, it belongs to the West Scandinavian group. separating it from the East Scandinavian group consisting of Swedish, Danish and Gutnish. While this classification is based on the differences between the North Germanic languages at the time they split, the present-day characteristics justify another classification, dividing them into Insular Scandinavian and mainland Scandinavian language groups, based on mutual intelligibility. Under this system, Norwegian is grouped together with Danish and Swedish because the last millennium has seen all three undergo important changes, especially in grammar and lexis, which have set them apart from Faroese and Icelandic. Norn is generally considered to have been fairly similar to Faroese, sharing many phonological and grammatical traits, and might even have been mutually intelligible with it. Thus, it can be considered an insular Scandinavian language. Few written texts remain. It is distinct from the present-day dialect of Shetland, termed by linguists Shetlandic. Phonology. The phonology of Norn can never be determined with much precision due to the lack of source material, but the general aspects can be extrapolated from the few written sources that do exist. Norn shared many traits with the dialects of southwest Norway. This includes a voicing of p, t, k to before or between vowels and a conversion of theta and th to and respectively. Grammar. The features of Norn grammar were very similar to the other Scandinavian languages. There were 2 numbers, 3 genders and 4 cases. The 2 main conjugations of verbs in present and past tense were also present, and like all other North Germanic languages, it used a suffix instead of a prepositioned article to indicate definiteness, as in modern Scandinavian man, mannen. Though it is difficult to be certain of many of the aspects of Norn grammar, documents indicate that it may have featured subjectless clauses, which were common in the West Scandinavian languages. Sample text. The following are Norn and Old Norse versions of the Lord's Prayer. Orkney Norn. Favor I chimri, hella I namthet, gillikosdom kommer, ver thine motivara gort, o yarn sinna gort I chimri, garvustar ondar dalit brow vora furgivevus sinavora, sin vifurgive sindara mothervus, lyv vus ye I temptation, per minute deliveravus fro ulti lt. Amen. Shetland Norn. Fivor or I Mary, Halavara namndiet. Le konungdom dinkama, le vildiend vera guerde I vrilden sinderi chimeri. Gavus dar jude glot brow. Forgive sindorwara, sin vi forgiver gem sinned against wus. Lear wus I covera temper, but deliver wus fro adlu idlu. Amen. Old West Norse. Father vars I himenriki, ver the nafn that heiligt tilkom right that ver tv lithin sva thusem I hymnem, gef os I dag brauth vort dalito kf yrgef u osinth ara sem ve acutar f yrgef omthymervithos hafamisgurt, leith d ocigii freistni, helda les thvos fra ollualu. Amen. Faroese. Fatir var to summerti himlanum. Heiligt for the navnithtit. Komi rikithtit. Ver the vilgitin. Sir summer himli. So jorth. Geviok my dag okara daliga braith. Firiga focum cindia okara, susum viacini fira java tiamum, ith motiocum cinda, lethocumiki I frastinga, menfrels ocum frati illa. Amen. Icelandic. Fatir vor, thusem erta hymnem. Helgist thitnafn, tilkomithidriki, ver the thin vilgi, svo ajor usem hymni, gef osi dag vort daglage brauth. Fyrirge phosphoras culdia, svo sem ve acutar og firage from vorum skuldanortum, og gigi leith thuos I freistni, helda frelseros fralu. Amen. Norwegian. Fader var du sommer I himmelen. lat namnet dit helgast, lat riketik, lat vilgend in rada par jordi somai himelin, gjevos I dagvart daglage brod, og folaros var skuld, som mi og folat ver skuld men, og for oss ikkj uti friesting men frels oss fra det vond. For riket dit og magtagera I all eva. Amen Norwegian. Fader var du sommer I himmelen. Lat namnet dit helgast. Lat riket dit, lat vilgend in rada par jordasar som I himmelen. Gjevos I dagvart daglage brod. Forla var skuld, som vag forlat ver skuld men, for oss ikkj uti friesting men frels oss fra det vond. Amen. Norwegian. Var for I himmelen. Lat namnet dit helgast. Lat riket dit, lat vilgend in rada par jordaslik som I himmelen. Gjevos I dagvart daglage brod, og tilgefos var skuld, slig og tilgef ver skuldnera, og lat oss ikkj, I friesting men frels oss fra det vond. Amen. A Shetland Guddig in Norn, which Jacob Jakobsen heard told on Unst, the northernmost island in Shetland, in the 1890s. The same riddle is also known from the Faroe Islands, from Iceland, and a variation also occurs in England. The answer is a cow. 4 teeth sang, 4 legs walk, 2 horns and 2 ears stand skyward, 2 eyes show the way to the field, and 1 tail comes shaking behind. Modern use. Most of the use of Norse in modern-day Shetland and Orkney is purely ceremonial, and mostly in Old Norse. For example, the Shetland motto, which is Methlogum skal land bygge, which is the same motto used by the Icelandic police force and inspired by the Danish Codex Holmiensis. Another example of the use of Norse Norn in the Northern Isles can be found in the names of ferries. Northlink Ferries has ships named MV Hamnavo and MV Haltland and MV Rossi. The Yell Sound ferry sails from Ulster on the island to Toft on the Shetland mainland. The service is operated by 2 ferries, Dagri, launched in 2003, and Dagalian, launched in 2004. Norn words are still used to describe many of the color and pattern variations in the native sheep of Shetland and Orkney, which survive as the Shetland and North Ronaldsay breeds. Icelandic uses similar words for many of the same color variations in Icelandic sheep. There are some enthusiasts who are engaged in developing and disseminating a modern form called Norn, based upon linguistic analysis of the known records and Norse linguistics in general.